you, Madam Chair. Madam Administrator, the two cartels that are sending fentanyl into the United States are located in Mexico, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it a fact that we could stop those cartels in their tracks if President Lopez Obrador would invite American military and/or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his military and law enforcement personnel?
Senator, what I would say from my purview as the head of the DEA.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Congress Every Day. Today we've got a heated exchange between Senator John Kennedy and the DEA Administrator over the fentanyl crisis and Mexico's cartels. We'll break down this moment where Kennedy grills the DEA Administrator over the lack of progress in tackling the cartels. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our latest content. Let's dive right into it. It starts with Kennedy asking about the two major cartels responsible for flooding the U.S. with fentanyl. Kennedy asks if the U.S. could stop these cartels if Mexico's president allowed American military and law enforcement personnel to assist. The DEA Administrator doesn't give a straight answer.
But is my statement true or not?
What I would say is that we're focused on the two cartels, who we believe are doing exactly what you say. They are responsible for the fentanyl coming
Let me
into
ask
the
you
United
again.
States.
If President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and/or American law enforcement officials to come into Mexico to work with the same in Mexico, we could stop the cartels, could we not?
Senator, I believe this is a whole of government effort and has to be, including whether it's the military, us, FBI,
Now,
and others.
Madam Administrator, I've listened to you here for almost an hour telling us how bad fentanyl is. Thank you for that, but we know.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you a third time.
Answer. She talks about a whole of government approach, emphasizing collaboration between U.S. and Mexican law enforcement. But Kennedy doesn't back down. He's looking for a more direct response. Kennedy presses further, asking if U.S. intervention in Mexico would be effective in stopping the cartels. He even asks the question 4 times in a row. Each time, the administrator dodges the question or offers vague responses. Kennedy's frustration starts to show, especially when he points out the lack of action despite more money being allocated. He calls out the government's response, saying, "In the real world, when you fail,
President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and/or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with the same in Mexico. We could stop the cartels. Isn't that a fact?"
So, Senator, I can speak to the law enforcement side of this, and you just mentioned law enforcement. I believe that this is vital for both Mexico and the United States. Mexicans are dying as well, as we showed in the Chapitos.
Well, then why don't we stop them?
So
Would it help? Let me ask you a fourth time. Would it help if President Lopez Obrador, I don't think it's a complicated question, Madam Administrator. You're asking us for more money every year, more money, and it gets worse, worse, and worse. You know, in the real world, the nitty-gritty of the real world, when you fail, you get fired. In government, when you fail, you get more money because obviously you need it. Now, let me ask you a fourth time.
You get fired. But in government, you get more money. It's clear Kennedy is tired of hearing about plans that aren't delivering results. Kennedy points out the huge economic disparity between the U.S. and Mexico. The U.S. economy is 18 times larger than Mexico's, and yet Mexico depends heavily on trade with the U.S. Kennedy argues that the U.S. has the leverage to demand action. He pushes the idea that the U.S. should offer Mexico a deal they can't refuse to allow American military and law enforcement personnel into Mexico to combat.
If President Lopez Obrador, and I'd appreciate an answer, if President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and/or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his, we could stop the cartels, couldn't we?
I believe, Senator, that we can stop the cartels.
Okay, have you made that suggestion to President Biden?
If I could, I believe that we can stop the cartels by
Have you made that suggestion to President Biden?
Senator, I have been very vocal in the whole of government setting on the importance of fentanyl, and all of us using every single effort and authority that we have.
Why hasn't President Biden done it? I mean, this is the way the American people whose sons and daughters are dying. Look at it. Our economy is $23 trillion. Mexico's economy is $1.3 trillion. Ours is 18 times bigger. We
To combat the cartels. His point is clear. Mexico's government may not have the ability or the will to stop the cartels on its own, but the U.S. could make it happen if the president were willing to step in. At this point, the DEA Administrator insists that the DEA is doing everything it can. She talks about the daily efforts of law enforcement personnel around the globe, but Kennedy isn't having it. He accuses her of not doing enough to solve the problem. He's direct. When it's important to you, you make it happen. When it's not, you make excuses. It's clear Kennedy believes the solution is simple, but the response from the government isn't matching the urgency of the crisis. This exchange reveals a serious...
We buy $400 billion every year from Mexico. Without the people of America, Mexico, figuratively speaking, would be eating cat food out of a can and living in a tent behind an outback. So why don't you and the president, embarrassing no one, get on the phone and call President Lopez Obrador and make him a deal he can't refuse to allow our military and our law enforcement officials to go into Mexico and work with his to stop the cartels? Why don't you do that?
Senator, what I am doing every single day is working with the incredible men and women of DEA who are risking their lives across 334 offices worldwide.
And I appreciate that, but you're not doing what would work. Why won't you do what will work?
Senator, we are...
Why don't you call the president this afternoon and say, Mr. President, let's call President Lopez Obrador.
Serious gap between what needs to be done and what's actually being done. So what do you think? Is the U.S. doing enough to stop the cartels, or is it time for a more aggressive approach? Should we send American military and law enforcement into Mexico to take down these cartels once and for all? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more in-depth analysis on the issues that matter most. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.